12-month vacation, we present to you the man the whole world is waiting to hear. New York, New York.
Who's on the air tonight, dear?
Jack Benny.
Oh, let's go to a movie.
Denver, Colorado.
Oh, Daddy, let's go see a picture show tonight.
Jack Benny is on the air.
I want to see
Shirley Temple.
Glasgow, Indiana. Heather, who's on the radio tonight?
Jack Benny.
Well, it'll cost me money, but let's go to the movies. So now, ladies and gentlemen, we bring to you the man who has done more for moving pictures than any other comedian, Jack Benny. Hey, Don, would you mind trying one more town? Which one? Oh, anyone. Say Waukegan, Illinois. Okay. Waukegan, Illinois.
Who's on the air tonight, Mr. Benny?
My son, Jack. What a boy.
Oh, then you're not going to the movie tonight.
No, I saw the picture. Do you want me to tune in any other town? No, Don, that's enough. Huh? Well, hello again. This is Jack Benny, who has just returned from his vacation, and I want to tell you, it's great to be back again. Back with this old gang of mine. You mean me, Jack? I sure do. Let's give Wilson a nice big hand. Yes, sir. But no kidding, Don, you look swell. Fit as a bass fiddle.
Thanks for indulging me there. I appreciate it. That's for me. Hello again. This is Ben Hitchcock Cross talking to you. I am. We're going to tell the story of the Department of Corrections, Kevin Carr, Amy Pechacek, and the victim here, and then we're going to talk about Officer Toutant and Officer Hartheim, and we're going to talk about a fishing trip on Lake Emily. So this is the story of, and we're going to talk about Lieutenant Miller. Joanna Stolar, who had made a complaint against the Department of Corrections, and John C Gelhard, or Judge Judy, as we sometimes call him, he and I would say more than anybody derailed this case completely, totally, and really to the point where I believe that he showed himself to be completely incapable of being an administrative law judge. He has since removed himself from all the cases that I'm a part of, that he and I had together, because he alleges that I was unprofessional. But as I think we'll have to go through here now in painstaking detail of the what I think is misconduct from administrative law judge or hearing examiner, John C Gelhard, or as we call him here, Judge Judy. And just so we're clear on why we call him that, he decided when yours truly, Ben Hitchcock Cross, stood up for the subject of Hanukkah, and those who were celebrating Hanukkah said basically, thank you for identifying your religion, and then put in the notes that the complainant's attorney says that he's Jewish. And again, besides me finding that, kind of offensive, that he would make such a totally irrelevant thing as the religion of the complainant's attorney at issue and put that in the state record. It shows to me, because nobody said that they were Jewish. What they said was it's inappropriate for you to be privileging Christian holidays over Hanukkah, you being an equal rights judge. And he inferred from that because someone stands up for Hanukkah, Jesus, like 6 months later, they must be Jewish. But it's that inference there that I believe more than anything else disqualifies John C. Gelhard from being an unbiased administrative law judge. And it's that inference there that earns him the name of Judge Judy. Okay. So now the main point of this is, and again, to get derailed, we just need to point out that all of his actions, Judge Judy's actions, really detract from the malfeasance of the Department of Corrections and Kevin Carr and Amy Pechacek, which I believe they were designed to do. But nevertheless, that's why we're making this video, to explain what exactly the Department of Corrections put this young lady through. So the complainant started out, what we'll call her, started out as a Department of Corrections prison guard. What do they call them? Correctional officers. And this is working out, I believe, out in Dodge. I think it's the Walls, as they call it. And almost Columbia, Dodge, that whole complex. I get a little bit confused, but this is the old-fashioned one out there. Chris Watts, I believe, is held there. That's the most notable prisoner. Okay, so she's working out there, and it's basically, she is alleging that she's being harassed by her lieutenant for many different reasons, but particularly because she is more pretty than the lieutenant, but otherwise a threat, a perceived threat from a state employee, a government actor, is saying that basically, I have to be the prettiest person in this area, or everybody else is going to suffer, or will exile them. And that one is way more common than you think. And I for sure don't think that that's unique to females, but I would say that this particular flavor of it is. And what is the evil witch in Snow White, Mirror, Mirror on the Wall? That's what we call this one. And I think for obvious reasons here, scratch obvious reasons. Why is this sex discrimination? I think that is the big question that you always need to ask yourself. And you're like, well, but you can't say that that's sex discrimination if you're saying that somebody's prettier than somebody else or whatever, right? Well, the test for sex discrimination is a but-for test, okay? And that, I think, it's taken me some long time to get through what the law is and what sort of our like preconceived notions are and what cultural traditions are. There's three of those things, and sometimes you really do have to like get yourself on that table, which it can easily be. It definitely happens to males where, and this is the other, it's sort of the like, is some group of people winning out or losing, so stop, freeze 1 second. We're going to presuppose this situation. Supervisor, supervisee are having some kind of an affair. Okay, relationship that would otherwise be inappropriate, and everybody else in there was sort of like doesn't like it. But the question is, are the other supervisees, the other employees, are they gaining something? Are they losing something because this particular employee is having consensual relationship with the supervisor? Okay, and the answer frequently is going to be yes. Why? Just for example. We can easily imagine that the person who is having a consensual relationship with the supervisor is going to get the best assignments. Easy. So in a finite universe, some people are going to get the worst assignments that wouldn't normally get the worst assignments, all other things being equal. Okay? So now here is sort of the kicker to all this. It's definitely possible for the person who's being disadvantaged and the person who's being advantaged to be of the same sex. Both female, both male, you get it. Pretty simple. And you're like, huh? Usually it's a male, you got to compare a male versus a female. And no, the comparator here is the male who's having a consensual relationship versus the other males, or just maybe other employees who are not, don't have the body parts, symmetry, whatever that's required to get that position. You follow me there? So that's sort of that one there, or this is sort of a variety of that, which is because of your body part symmetry, etc., you would be getting better assignments, but you're getting all the, you're getting kicked down low because the boss doesn't like you. Okay. And why doesn't the boss not like you? But for you being for example, a male, that wouldn't be happening to you. Do you see how that follows there? Believe me, it took me months to get that concept. Okay. So that is the first allegation there, that there's a Lieutenant Miller who is basically making allegations that the complainant is sleeping around, is promiscuous, I think is a word that came up, and is otherwise going after her, disadvantaging her, and so forth. And the complainant makes a bullying and sexual harassment complaint against that person, the Lieutenant Miller. That one is handled fairly early on, and it's handled by the deputy warden there, Jason Wells, if his name comes up. That's my recollection. And that is basically summarily dismissed by the warden. Now, why is that interesting? There's so much in Novak about, is internal affairs involved? I'm not totally sure, because I haven't looked at everything in a couple of months, if that incident happens before Kevin Carr comes on and they do this internal affairs. Because I think we all know, based on Novak and other things, that the internal affairs would get involved if that was at that time, and it would not be handled. It's important it not be handled on the institutional level. Well, here may be an example of where the warden is sort of covering for his lieutenant. No problem. They're all white shirts together. They all work in the same office. You can see how, there is a point there, and there's a reason for, especially this kind of allegation, that there is some justification to the concept that there should be a central internal affairs that's outside of the control of the warden. Just to push back on Jim Swatchert's testimony out there, but I think it's pretty important. Okay. Number two, then I think the second big allegation is that there is a fishing trip on Lake Emily. And there's some question about whether it's official. DoC, Department of Correction, is sanctioning it. From my understanding, I think there's no question that the Department of Corrections had knowledge of it. I don't think that they told them they could do it. I don't think they told them they couldn't do it. Certainly much of the management from the institution, meaning most of and Department of Corrections institutions, meaning prisons, managements are called white shirts, which I think is a lieutenant and up. And people below that, the worker officers, are called blue shirts, which is a officer and a sergeant, those positions. A sergeant, whatever that quasi-military rank, is essentially a lead worker of a correctional officer, just so we're clear. But most of management was there, including Emily Miller, I'm thinking at least 20. It's been a while since I've watched that deposition, but that's my rough estimate here. Okay. So the allegations also are that because of these rumors and other statements from Lieutenant Miller that basically say that the complainant is fair game, that at the ice fishing event, she's sexually assaulted and then sexually harassed by two different people, both times in front of management, and both times management pretends that nothing happens. So the first event is a Jason Toutant, I believe his name is, Toutant. The allegation is that he starts massaging her shoulders and then basically grabs her breasts in front of a bunch of people. And she says, like, acts outraged. She is outraged and tells him that what is he doing? He can't do it. There's a male there that witnesses it and tells him that he needs to stop too. I think his act is that he says that it was he slipped or something along those lines. Not obvious to me how that's possible, but we'll see how that plays out. I believe that was all. I don't even think satisfactorily determined in court. I think it was possibly even dismissed out, which was kind of shocking. That whole handling of that complaint out there against Sergeant Touton. I could look it up, but I won't. My recollection is that ultimately it was pled out, which, like, if there was anything on that one is I have had a lot of different of experiences with victims that I've represented, and sometimes the police are their best friends and they help them, and sometimes you will never hear from them again, and the police are sort of trying to cover everything, wish that everything would go away, and I would say people feel like the police are trying to cover things up, and that is sort of the problem there, is when there's a lack of communication, people wonder about what's going on. And I have had that experience several times, especially in assault allegations, at MPS, for example. But, hey, I don't need to compare myself. Those things aren't comparable. But I'm saying for sure, when there's like allegations against MPS, that's sort of the universal feeling that I get. And I get that response quite often from sexual assault victims that I represent, that the police, especially when it's a government thing, the police are like, we kind of don't want to talk to you anymore. I'm just really unfortunate that there would be a difference in response and all that, or even a perception of a difference in response, because it really causes problems for both the police and the citizens. So then shortly after that, I would say in the bar area, a Hartzheim asked, I think twice, the complainant if he could see her boobs. That's the verbiage that I got from that one. It's my understanding that he was dating a white shirt at that time, that this happened in front of several white shirts and other people, and there's some difference of agreement. The white shirts, I guess, say that they didn't know that, and there's some disagreement about the complaints and how that was all dealt with. Now, here's sort of the kicker in all this. The response to this ultimately is because my client is kind of out of it after that, and certainly shocked. But they do go through a whole thing. But both of these guys basically go back to work more or less instantaneously. And originally, what they do is they move my client to Madison. So she's working at the door, and she's greeting Kevin Carr and Secretary Pechacek every day. And she has a conversation there with Christy Preston, head of Internal Affairs, who tells her that, Kevin Carr and Secretary Pechacek know all about her issue. That's what we have, I think, under oath there. And it's a shame what they're doing. Christy Preston apparently tells the complainant that it was a shame what they did to her, and like that. So that's kind of problematic. Then they send her back to the institution. Again, she has to drive an hour away, and the men who assaulted her or harassed her basically get to continue in their job. And they move the guard, this is Toutant, the guy who assaulted her, to the women's prison, but apparently they're all, if you know where walls and the women, they're not really that far away, and they're all, I think, essentially controlled by the same set of offices. So they keep coming into contact, and as far as I know, that is ultimately the straw that broke the camel's back for her, and she is unable to continue going back to work, having to, I would say, just be in proximity to him. And this is, I think, what is strange about constructive discharge. So normally in an employment situation or any kind of tort situation, the person that you injure, you deal with them as they come. Okay? So, it goes like this for damages especially. Two guys get their butts grabbed by the boss, and the boss laughs at him, and one guy shakes it off, and the other guy who was sexually assaulted is like a basket case, and we're talking about a situation like that. Leaves the profession, goes to school, gets another job, but ultimately really never works as a full professional for the rest of their life. Huh? Two completely different outcomes. One is damaged, and they're liable for those damages. The other one, it's the question of, the company is liable for the damages as they actually happen. It's the same thing with eggshell, right? If you just touch somebody and they're a big, strong person and it's assault, what are the damages? And you touch somebody and they've got hollow bones or whatever, and, they nearly die. What are their damages? Right? So that's one concept of how to look at it. The other one is what, in the terms of constructive discharge, there are really two kinds of damage thresholds in employment law. We're going to talk about two briefly. I got to go momentarily. Number one, hostile work environment. Okay? That is a severe and pervasive situation, situation, condition at work in which an ordinary, and this is an ordinary person, would find it intolerable. Okay? Now, that is high threshold. Number two, there is a constructive discharge, which is even higher, okay? Now, when you're looking at, in terms of being fired as opposed to constructive discharge, I always say it's like 10 times harder to prove or whatever, but that's sort of a false equivalent because we're talking about 0 to something else, okay? I'm sorry for the unclear jokes here. But again, hostile work environment, constructive discharge. One is substantially higher than the other. That's the key concept. And who is the one that's judging what it is the judge. Okay, so keep that in mind. It's not a subjective test. It's an objective test. I hope I got that right. And the constructive discharge means an ordinary employee, meaning the judge, would feel that it was so intolerable that they couldn't come to work, or that the employer communicates to the employee that they no longer have a job there. Okay? Let's go for the in reverse order. No longer have a job there. That could come in a lot of different forms. Cutting hours. My favorite one is to literally brick up your door. Number two, communicate in some kind of newspaper that he's fired. Tell everybody that he's fired. Stuff like that, okay? Communicate to everybody. We don't tell you you're fired, but whatever. The other way to communicate it is to just make your job so terrible, and we all know how this happens. We're going to make, we don't want to fire Bob because we don't want to pay Bob unemployment, so we're going to make him quit, okay? but you've got that in England too. I'm sure I've seen that, articles on that. I'm sure you guys have that in Australia. What the heck do you call that, right? Because you have employment contracts, but there is some way. Thank you. Please just let us know. What do you call that in Australia and England, any other place, when the boss makes you quit? Okay? So that really is the question there. And then I'm selling her situation short, okay? But ultimately, because there is this lead up, they keep basically running into each other, and she keeps adversely reacting to that. Okay, she communicates to the supervisors, to the management, that she can't work when they keep running into each other. They move her to Madison for several months, where she has to drive basically an extra hour each way. He gets to continue to do his normal job. She goes back, and they continue to run into her. Thereafter, more or less, she says, I cannot deal with this anymore. You guys are trying to force me out here. I'm leaving. Okay, something along those lines. So that is the thrust of the story there in very broad terms. The Secretary of the Department of Corrections is aware of the sexual assault and sexual assault allegations, and is aware that the victim is so uncomfortable continuing to work with the person who assaulted her, that she has requested them to be separated. And the Secretary of the Department of Corrections, Kevin Carr, knew that that instead of moving the male, they moved the victim. And that Chrissy Preston told the victim that it was terrible what Kevin Carr was doing to her. And then they let her go back after some months of punishing her and seeing if she would quit after making her drive an extra hour and so forth. And then she's right back there with the guy who, as she said, grabbed her boobs. So, and I just want to leave you all with this one quote, because I think she was asked this in a deposition. How did it make you feel? And I think this Kevin Carr, Amy Pechacek, I would say Judge John C Gelhard, and others, the answer was, it made her feel like a piece of meat. So, there we are. That's the state of Wisconsin in action for you at some time. And remember, when we get into this is the state of Wisconsin, who's both the perpetrator, and then the state of Wisconsin as the judge. So we'll see here, just with the state of Wisconsin and Milwaukee Public Schools, if that's really working out. We'll see what happens when the state of Wisconsin and the Department of Corrections, if the Equal Rights Division is actually up to the task. Oh, and let's not keep in mind, Kevin Carr was assisted by Amy Pechacek, who then is the boss of Judge Judy John C Gelhard. So let's just round it all out there to see how the state of Wisconsin is failing to enforce the Wisconsin Fair Employment Act. That is what we're going to go into here now. So let's keep that in mind. Let's keep in mind the real assault that really happened, and the real punishing of the victim that really was executed by Amy Pechacek and Kevin Carr, which is the allegations here. So, we'll see what happens, but stick with us. We will keep you informed. I am excited. It is going to go see a play. Going to go see a play put on by a bunch of sixth graders. I would say mostly improv. So I don't think much could be on such a beautiful day today. There's not many other things that could keep me inside. So I appreciate you sticking with me because I kept you informed on that one.